It's amazing on a day with little to no news how the Cleveland Guardians can still, I don't know if I want to say step in it, but can come out looking not great. I'm going to tell you what this story is and why I think it's a bit of hooey, as well as catching up on things after my holiday vacation. All on today's Locked On Guardians.
Tanner Bobby the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. On today's show, I'm going to quickly talk about this Baseball America article. I'm also going to talk about some of the rumors. Like I literally today, preparing for the show, was curious to look for rumors, and all it taught me again is why you need to pay attention. We're going to kind of talk about the humorness, my humor that I find, false rumors. We're going to look at, we know the Guardians made an attempt at Gleyber Torres. We're going to talk about how, who's out there that maybe they could consider or should consider still in free agency. Because I know people are like, oh, they're cheap. They're not going to, I mean, Gleyber Torres wasn't going to accept an invite to camp. They clearly still have some flexibility. And we'll talk about, even if they don't spend now, why I think they will be spending later. But before we get into that, I want to take a moment and give a shout out to today's sponsor, FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And for those who do not know me, I'm going to do your favorite part of the show here. I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your hosts here. Before I was the host of Locked On Guardians, I was the national writer at Scout and 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft. And now, without further ado, let's talk some baseball. So I love Baseball America. Jeff Ponce was like the third Beatle of this podcast last year with the draft. But they put out this article that people who have an axe to grind, I felt like, ran with. For those who missed it, it talked about what teams are the most scout friendly, and Cleveland was actually, listed as the least scout friendly organization. And I already saw some sites running with this idea of like, oh, this is bad because this team has to scout well. First, let's talk. 24 is not a big sample size. Cleveland also has let go a lot of scouts in recent years, so there's probably a lot of people who are not happy, with Cleveland. Their scouting room is smaller because they have the people they trust. They go and look at areas, and they kind of take those scouting reports and then also run them through the data they get. And there's so much data you're getting through. It's not stats. That's the difference, right? It's not necessarily, about performance. It's about looking. We talk about this all the time. Pitching. It's about looking at the traits and what you can do with it. It's looking at a hitter and being like, okay, this is the bare minimum exit velocity a guy needs to be successful. This is the level where this could lead to great things. And it's a lot of taking that data, matching up with like the area scout. But so this report came out, that it's I can't remember the exact wording. And go read Baseball America, get a subscription. We love Baseball America. Carlos is one of the nicest guys in the business. Jeff Ponce, like I said, was like the third Beatle of this podcast. But right now, as I'm recording, Gavin Lux to the Reds. This stuff always seems to happen. I actually talked about Gavin Lux in a chat with Justin, and how Gavin Lux could be a target for Cleveland. 1.5 years left on Lux. So this slow day, I'll put comments in here as we go. But sorry, ADD, very distracted, very easily. But yeah, people like to look for negative. Unfortunately, let's be honest, it's a toxic relationship with the parts of the fan base in this team, either because they view ownership as being the worst in baseball, which again, that's a comically bad take because Jerry Reinsdorf is like right over there. And there's a lot of like really, there's John Fisher, who I sat there and said should go visit Hurricanes. There's much worse owners. I'll state again that I think that you've got ownership that's not good, but it's not comically bad. It's not that level of ownership when it comes to this team. Now, do I wish they could spend more? Yeah, but I'm also curious to see if even if new ownership that is coming is going to be able to spend more either. It's It's one of the smallest markets. It just, that's the way baseball is set up. It's never going to be fair. Like, that's just the truth of it. It's never going to be fair. But for people who are angry with this team, this was another thing. Like, oh well, if they don't scout well, they make it hard on scouts, then this is just going to be a failure organization. And I don't know. We've talked to scouts and they have a lot of guys who've been there forever and get promoted and then move on to other places. So I don't think. I mean, is it maybe a hard environment? I could believe that. I don't think. I think specifically too, like, I don't think a lot of area scouts get promoted. They've had a lot of area scouts who've been there for 2 to 3 years, and that's it. So this article, it's interesting to look at. It's interesting to read. Baseball America is a place that does fantastic work. I'm see if I can pull up the exact of it. But yeah, it's I don't know. When I just kind of looked at it all, I'd like to get the exact wording just for this one part. What organizations are the least scout friendly? Which one are the best at identifying? And that's a funny thing too. Like, they were near the bottom at identifying talent, which actually we know that they've been pretty good at. Specifically, they're great at identifying talent from other teams. They do their best work in trades. Which organizations are the worst at identifying talent? And Cleveland was 5th. White Sox, Athletics, Angels, Marlins. So actually they were 6th. Rockies, Blue Jays, and then the Guardians with 4. Yeah, teams like the Nationals, who have been really bad at identifying talent, lower than Cleveland. Talk about some of the other teams on here that have really rough minor leagues. So this felt to me like a bit of an axe to grind situation. We know they have cut down on their overall scouting room, and that is a negative overall effect when it comes to how scouts view the organization. They're definitely a new school approach. They're always at the cutting edge. I wouldn't sit back, for those who saw the article, and view this as like the sky is falling situation. Yes, they did not evaluate well in terms of this small sample size of scouts that came in and talked to them, nor did they, they didn't get positive marks. But I think if you look at this team, you don't have the run they've had. And whether or not you agree with their approach, since 2013 through now, like one season where they were a bottom 10 team in baseball, with the market size, with the payroll limitations, there's no way that is a bottom 10 team in identifying talent, because you don't get to stay at that peak level if you can't identify talent. You end up in situations when you're a bottom team like that, being the Marlins, where, they also traded away everything that wasn't nailed down. We can look at the Blue Jays. That's a team that's hoping to contend, and Ernie Clement is right now set to be their starting third baseman. Which maybe you're going to say, well, hey, Cleveland shouldn't let him go. I'm still fine with Ernie Clement moving on. But you don't have sustained success if you can't do that. And if you're not scouting properly, at least, again, you can argue that they haven't done well with high school kids. They've not done well with Latin America. They've done pretty well with college players, but what they excel at are trades. And it's scouting those minor league players. And, so I will say that's the one thing in there that they did say specifically, that Cleveland is not great with identifying high school talent, but I also say that Cleveland, some of that could also be Cleveland goes for more low ceiling high school typically. And I don't think that's necessarily what a lot of scouts love. It's kind of an outdated book now, but I still think Moneyball is worth reading, just because it's fascinating to see that old school scouting approach and to hear, some of what gets written about and said in that book. So I'd recommend that. I think it's a slow news day outside of this Gavin Lux trade that is breaking here. But yeah, I think when you're looking at this whole situation overall, that it's fun to talk about. It's interesting to look at, but there's not too much to it. Now, quickly, I want to kind of do this second part here about false rumors. So I literally typed Cleveland Guardians rumors. I was just curious to see what would pop up. And I got a Cleveland Guardians site, which then talked about, hey, this writer at Sports Illustrated is saying that Cleveland is interested in a former free agent, got a $44 million contract. And the SI writer, again, people do great work at SI. This is a Yankees writer writing about why they think that on one of the blog sites, saying that Cleveland, hey, they've been connected to Steven Matz. It seems like their type of guy. So this person then is writing an article based on someone else's And you got two guys who, again, Twitter followers aren't everything, but when you got two guys under 1,000 followers writing about this, and it's a Yankees writer and someone who's aggregating content, and then this is how like Steve Matt's rumors get started. And you go and you look at everyone they've added this offseason has had extension. That's their number one thing. Steve Matz has terrible extension. So like anyone who actually follows this team with any amount of depth of knowledge would say Steven Matz is actually a terrible fit for Cleveland. And when I'm going through and I look at a lot of the article you should never read is the one that is like, here is 5 articles. Like we're going to aggregate someone else's content and give you one sentence to describe what this article is about. And you can go click and get more. Yeah, it might be good for giving you baseline information, but often they're, especially at this point in the year, people are grabbing for anything. I've seen so many clout chasing tweets. I've seen so many people saying stuff, making things up. This happened a year ago. You know, we talked about the Shane Bieber is going to be traded imminently. And then, I mean, he's going to be here not just last year, but also this year as well. So again, just be careful. There aren't really a whole lot of rumors. And I'm going to point out again, we weren't on any of the deals that were happening when they happened with Cleveland. And I when I was tweeting with Justin just as I was driving to a family thing last week, he was kind of like, I don't think they're going to trade Lux. And this isn't me to throw him under a bus or anything like that, but people, a lot of these rumors, these trades develop out of not as much, right? Like they stay hidden until they pop. That's how most of these deals happen. If you want to debate, you want to throw things out, have at it, have fun with it all. I'm sorry I got derailed by a trade in the middle of the podcast here. We're going to be back in a moment. Maybe we'll have more of the Lux information. We'll talk about some free agent stuff. And maybe we'll take a moment to evaluate where the Reds are in terms of their depth, just because of, they got rid of Jonathan India, added Lux, and it's, we know that there is some connections between those organizations. All in today's Locked On Guardians. Who doesn't love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy? One of my favorite memories were attending. Sorry, it's an ad reader. Attending a concert. I've got young kids. I unfortunately didn't go to a concert last year. But here's the thing: when you get to go to one of my favorite memories, though, was going to a Brewers game a year ago, getting the bobblehead behind me. I got the box, which you can't see thanks to my microphone, right there. And I did. I went over to Game Time, checked it out, used their guarantee, and used the all-in pricing, because the most annoying thing when it comes to tickets is, hey, oh man, this is a great deal. I can't believe how good it is. And you put it in the cart, and all of a sudden, the cost of the tickets triples in price. You're like, wait, this was $20 per ticket, and now I'm paying $100 for 2. So with Game Time, you're avoiding that. You click all in. You can see exactly where the seats are. You can get all the views. They have their price match guarantee. It just saves you time. It saves you so much time, and time is valuable, right? And no matter, like I said, Justin is all in. I don't go to as many events because, again, I got young kids. Justin has no kids. So I don't get as many opportunities to use Game Time. But when I do, I jump on it because I know this is a fantastic deal that they have. I know it's a fantastic site. And I trust Justin, who, like, this is the only service he uses anymore. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So, no, we still don't have any additional news on this breaking bit. It is kind of funny because the Reds need they need an outfielder. Instead, they got another infielder, Mike Sirota, favorite of the show here, and the Comp A pick 37. I'm curious to see if Matt McLean's now going to move to the outfield with Lux. Lux only has 2 years left. That's interesting. Another comp pick. We're seeing comp picks get traded a bunch. So Dodgers trade the 37th pick in the draft, which is interesting because, the Dodgers get the 37th pick in the draft. I'm sorry, which is interesting because I got to look at who's out there with a qualifying offer, but they're not qualifying offer hunting. That's what we know now, because that is the pick they would lose if they went out and signed a free agent. They would lose that second pick. It gives them quite a bit of strength too, because that pick might actually end up being before their first round pick because of their spending. I believe they have it's going to be a little different because we got to look at, the competitive picks, and I look at pick order, but they're going to drop 10 spots. They should have been 30. I think, I mean, I assume that would drop them all the way to 40. I think it's just a full 10 spot drop. It doesn't matter about the competition picks, not the competitive balance picks. So they're going to pick 37 and 40. Have a chance to get 2 guys. It's a lot of money for them to spend. It allows them to have, a good amount for a team that has lost a lot of pick signing free agents in recent years. It's a way to help them get some money to spread out. They do need to reinvest in their minors to a degree, especially, if you go out and give your whole pool to Sasaki, which might be happening. I was curious to see, honestly, with this deal as it was happening live, if they would get money in the trade. Like if I keep looking to see who is trading to acquire more money. Like that's going to be the sign. But this is interesting. As you know, we're big Sirota fans here, and a comp A pick is always a lot of fun to add more of those. And I like that we're seeing more picks get traded in general. So that's interesting. And I was debating talking about, I just want to show this. I'm going to show you all my screen here. I'm sorry if you're listening live at live on the radio. It's not live. There's no way. So let's share screen. Because the funny thing here is I just want to point out, I don't think I have anything bad on my screen here. Hopefully this doesn't throw anything off. I guess I'll go with a window. No, it's not gonna. Okay, so there we go. So if you just kind of look here real quick, I'm going to click over. I think this will show it. Like I had Gavin Lux open to talk about as a potential person. Like it's here. My third tab is this one. Gavin Lux is over there. I'll stop sharing this now. Like I was set up to actually discuss him as a potential like trade person in the third section. I know it says free agent targets as us going to talk trades. So this is out the window. I'm going to close that tab now. So that's mildly amusing to me as someone I wanted to talk about on today's show. I said with the Reds, the overall impact, we haven't seen Cleveland and the Reds. Like what was the last deal, the Bauer deal between these two teams? I'm assuming that, like I said, McLean to the outfield, Lux to second. I don't really see a guy there to jump out and acquire. I got to be honest. Yeah, I think they're pretty much set. So I don't think this actually affects Cleveland in that way. But yeah, interesting. They're doing some things there. I don't know how I feel about the things they're doing, but they're doing some things. They're definitely interesting. I like this move. I like it for both sides. But yeah, I guess I'm not talking about Gavin Lux is a Guardians target. So pivoting, we talked about the whole scouting thing and how it's not ideal, but I wouldn't take it as the end of the world. Again, just check sources. Occasionally I break things, but very rarely. I'm not even saying to trust me though. I've had equal amounts wrong as right. I can tell a story. I remember people getting really mad because it was down in AA and everyone around us thought a trade was happening. The way they were acting, getting around and talking to players, I'm like, I guarantee a trade is happening. And then no trade happened. And we were all like, I guess not. Like it was a moment. It was the trade deadline. We're watching this thing unfold. They're taking forever for us to get our interviews. All of it was unusual. There was much to do about nothing. So like, if things are going to happen, if you're going to believe stuff, it's probably better to check with the Mandys, with the Hoyneses, with the Zachs, with the places that actually do break information from time to time. Sorry, I had a bit of a kid rundown situation there. Of course, ADD, lost my whole train of thought. So that's kind of a rundown of what we've discussed. Now let's talk about some of, again, we know that they were attempting to get Gleyber Torres. They wanted to add another bat to the lineup. I'm going to talk about how I'm get myself in trouble here. The whole thing is like, you know who to trust, go to those sources, know the places that are good and know the places that are less than good. It's fun to dream, but I get annoyed when I get annoyed by false rumors. I do. I'm sorry. I get annoyed by false rumors and people making stuff up. But to get into, the Torres situation again, we know they're willing to spend. It was probably at least $10 million offered, which would put their payroll above last year's payroll. Right now, they're currently about 7 million under. But before I go into these targets, I do want to point out they added combined salary of 12.2 million last year at the deadline between Cobb and Thomas. Now, in fairness, they only had to pay about 40% of that, so that's probably closer to 5 million. But that was about a $5 million change from the previous year. And part of the other thing too is we also have to wait and see what shakes out. There are a few players who didn't settle. We don't know what the arbitration numbers are going to be, which could also be part of the reason maybe they're not jumping in with 2 feet right now into the current market. So I think you kind of have to look at that and remember that. I know a lot of people still get mad about this idea of, well, they didn't spend like last year. Yeah, but in fairness, like I said, about 5 million of that was from the deadline. So they are 2 million under their opening day payroll from a year ago. So, I mean, what are you going to get for 2 million in this market? Not much. That's for sure. So they're right about there. And the fact that they're willing to go out and present an offer. And the reason I think they were willing to go for Torres is he only wanted a 1-year deal. And that stuff matters. When they can go out and get a guy on a 1-year deal, I think that is something that's valuable, important, and the reason why is because then you're not stuck. You're not stuck like Josh Bell, where they had to take back Segura. And hey, they got a prospect out of it. I don't know if Khalil Watson is going to even make my top 30 this year, but they got a prospect to do it. But you're looking at those 1-year deals because it's easier to get away from that player if it doesn't go well. And for the Tigers, let's say Torres is an all-star type of player. Hey, maybe they can put the qualifying offer on him in a year and get a draft pick. Like there's lots of ways to look at it, right? But trying to find players that make sense to this team. Listen, free agency is pretty picked over, and let's be honest, they're not going to chase the top of it. They're not going to go. It's been a weird year where last year relievers went quickly, and that could be Cleveland's other problem. Honestly, is the relief market really has not picked up in free agency yet. We have not seen a ton of those guys go off. There's a lot of useful relievers, guys like Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. Jeff Hoffman, David Robertson, Carlos Estevez, Andrew Kittredge was solid with the Cardinals a year ago. There's a ton of relievers out there that you could go out and get and help your team. And I think that's one of the reasons that Cleveland has just not been able to find a reliever trade. And I was looking at some of the teams that had really bad bullpens a year ago, and it's also like, that's why I was kind of like ragging on the Blue Jays a bit, because I spent some time studying them today because they had the worst bullpen war in baseball last year. But there just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like their depth bat was Horowitz, and there's no one beyond that. So yeah, it's really weird in terms of how we have not seen a lot of relievers move. So if Cleveland is maybe hoping that they can do a relief trade, if there's teams like Texas I know needs it, and Toronto and Baltimore, the New York Mets, there are lots of teams that can use a lot of relief help. And I'm not sure we are going to see a lot of movement until we see the relief market move. Now, being said that, I'm not looking at those guys for Cleveland. I'm going to start off with like a very, very low end player. And that's more in terms of cost, but not in terms of performance. Donovan Solano is the Charlie Morton of infielders. He has had a WRC plus north of 100 every year since 2019, except for 2022, where he had a 99. And he's getting about 300 plate appearances a year in those. It's not like it's a small sample size, and he consistently gets the league minimum. Now, is his defense average? No. It's bad, but he plays third, he plays second, he plays first base, he plays some DH. He's right-handed bat, so he's better against lefties than righties for his career. I should look at his splits for last year, but it's like his splits for his career, by the way, on top of being a guy who plays, it was versus righties is a 107 versus lefties a 134, so above league average. I'm sorry, that was last year. 134 against lefties, a 107 against righties. So he hit well against both sides. For his career, he's a 101 and a 98. So again, it's not like he's useless against right-handed bats, which are the majority. He's not a great defender, but Juan Brito is probably going to get the chance at second base, and he's not good either. So you're not missing much there. And Solano is, another veteran presence. He is 37 years young, but the reason I kind of like this idea of Solano is because he can play multiple positions, which has value. He is not a, break the bank kind of guy. Gives you a little bit more insurance. In terms of just like month-to-month performance last year, he had a WRC plus over 100 in every single month except for June. He had a 75. So consistent production too. Really, well, I mean, it's 196 is super high at the start, 75, 134, 130, 107 to end, but you can count on him. Again, defense is nothing to write home about. Perfect is kind of a, utility guy. Maybe age finally catches up to him. I was looking at his Savant page. His 23 data was better than his 24 data. So there's some signs of that, but at the same time, sorry, I just got to, so I can really see that he didn't get enough to qualify. So it's kind of hard to see some of it. But when you're looking at it, it's like he hits the right launch angle, expected batting average is high for him. He in the 23 is the last time he qualified. His chase and whiff and K and walk are all below average. His defense and speed are not there, but he just hits it on the right part of the bat, and he would give this team a little more depth on the infield. Now, ideally, it'd be a left-handed bat, not a right-handed bat, but I feel like if he was a left-handed bat, he wouldn't have had to settle for the minimum like the last 4 years running. But it just boggles my mind that like last year he was a camp invite for the Padres, and he ended up getting 309 plate appearances and had a 118 WRC plus. That's coming off a year we had 450 plate appearances for the Twins and had a 116. Like, he plays a lot, he plays well, and you're probably giving him the league minimum. And I think it'd be good to have a vet on this team in terms of the infield, just in case it doesn't go well with someone like Brito. He's not gonna play shortstop, but like it just gives you another player. I know people are like, I just rather see, some of the young players play, but I don't see a lot of upside in Freeman at this point. Like, yeah, it's fine. Brito, send him out there. But this is a player who you can sign for, like I said, league minimum. I'm betting again. And he can be a solid depth bat. He can be a bench bat. He can be a guy who's going to play every third day. And it just gives you an option in case it doesn't work out. Like, he is that type of player where he's going to give you a little more. It's one of the things I always stand by is improving every spot on your roster. And he's going to improve that utility spot. And he's going to be a guy you can play quite a bit, give other players rests. Again, the defense isn't great. The speed isn't great, but he's just a professional hitter. And a 116 and a 118 on the Cleveland Guardians last year. So he had a 118 in San Diego, which is not, known as necessarily a great hitter's park. A 118 would have been tied with Josh Naylor in terms of WRC plus on this team a year ago. David Fry, Juan Ramirez, the only guys higher than that. And I don't know how to go back in years here. What he did for the Twins, I believe, would have been number 2 or 3 on Cleveland the year before that. So age is the question, but you're not going to find a better deal in baseball than what Donovan Solano has done the last few years. If they have a little bit more money to play with, I'm going to keep, batting the drum for Ha-Seong Kim, who to me is still one of the most interesting free agents. I know he had a down year with his injury. I know he's going to miss time due to injury, but hey, they weren't scared off by Bieber. And here's the nice thing with Kim. You go out and you give this guy a 2, maybe a 3-year contract. He's 29 years old. His value is down. He is an excellent defender at short. He can play short. He can play second. I think he's even played some outfield. I should double check that. I could be wrong. He's an undersized guy entering his 30s. We talked about, how that's not always the best thing, but he's been highly productive until his injury. Extremely highly productive until his injury. A 105, a 110, and last year was just a 101. But he's doing that with almost no power. I guess he did have 17 home runs. It just, on his Savant page, his hard hit is very low. But he doesn't chase, he doesn't whiff, he doesn't K, he doesn't walk. He has the right launch angle and he squares up on the ball. So he does a lot of things positively on top of just being very fast and a very good defender. And if you sign a Ha-Seong Kim and you give him a 2-year deal, because you're trying to benefit from the fact, I don't know what the cost would be, but let's say you give him if you can get him to accept 2 years, 24 million, 12 million a year, that's more than you're paying Jimenez. And, for him, he can more view it as I'm getting 6 and then I'm getting 18 or something like that, because he's going to miss about half the year. But what Kim then buys you is when he's ready to play, if Rocchio doesn't work, he was a great defender, but if the bat stays at a 70, maybe you move on. If Juan Brito doesn't translate, or if the defense is just too bad and this team is just losing games because of the huge drop from, the best defender on the planet to a bad defender, then you could move him into there. It gives you some insurance in terms of where you can put him at, he's got a strong arm. That's why I feel like you could even put him out there in right field. And I know that's a bold statement to make because he's never played the outfield. He's played every spot on the infield. But I don't know, I even feel like this is a dude who could play center. I'm a big believer in what he's done. He seems to make the right routes. He's a smart baseball player. Maybe not ideal in mid-year coming back from injury, but you would find, to have him learn the outfield on the fly. But again, I think you are incredibly lucky if Rocchio and Brito both are successful. So I think it is a situation where you're trying to find ways in case things go sideways. And much like how Bieber is almost going to be like a trade deadline addition, maybe a little earlier, you could get a similar situation with Kim. If this dude had been healthy, I think he's getting 3 years, 60 million, 4 years, 80, something like that. Maybe gets 500 because of the value of the positions he plays and the things he does so incredibly well. So I still think this is someone that Cleveland should strongly consider. Let's just, talk. People keep bringing up Santander. It's not happening. He can't play outfield anymore. He can't. It's really, really bad. He's a first base DH only, and Cleveland's not giving up a draft pick. They just value those too much. Jess Winker has come up a few times. They're trying to remove questionable character guys. I don't think they're going to chase him. Randall Gierchuk, they need left-handed bats, not right-handed bats. I know I've just now spent this whole time talking about a pair of right-handed bats with Ha-Seong Kim and Donovan Solano, so you have to excuse me. But it's that's not the player they quite need for this current team in this current situation. And then after that, it really kind of falls off unless you want to, I don't know who the guy is you want to chase in free agency, this far down. There aren't a lot of great players that fit. This is why, if you can go back to listen to my show from last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, it's like trying to do the Jesus Sanchez makes sense because they're looking for that left-handed bat who's not going to be a someone who breaks the bank. Now, I know I can also see if they actually went out and signed Ha-Seong Kim and I'm trying to do backflips instead of breaking my back, then a lot of people would be really mad. They'd be like, it's a light hitting infielder, another infielder on this team. It's another, but I think you just got to find any way to improve. Any way to improve at all. I think he is honestly, over the next 3 years, I would bet on, even with his injury, ending up having a higher WAR than Pete Alonso because of the first base relative value, and Santander because of first base relative value. Might be a wild take to some people, but I'll point out he was worth 4.2 WAR a year ago. A full healthy season with the fact that he's a 3-facet player. And again, San Diego, I'd have to go look at park factors. He hit 17 home runs last year. Or not last year. In 2023 when healthy. 17 home runs. That's not an insignificant amount. That'd be pretty good on this team. Outside of Jimenez's breakout year, that's when he hit 17. He has 13 has been, and 15 were the other two amounts. 15 and then 9. 13 is his projection for next year. But yeah, I think this is a way to improve. I think it's a pathway that makes logical sense for a guy who is entering age 30, hurt, and is smaller. There's reasons why teams get a little gun shy, and these are all things that don't typically scare the Guardians. So I'm hoping this is maybe their lie and wait guy. The other thing I want to throw out is I was kind of looking at some guys. If you can do some camp invites, I'd be kind of intrigued with a few pitchers. I do think they've got some, I feel like the core group of who's potentially going to be that fifth starter, is there already. I think they're expecting it to come out of the group of arms they have. That being said, they have been successful with camp invites. Spencer Turnbull is a player I've often liked. He had some good moments at Philadelphia a year ago. There's some good data there. I liked him in his Detroit days. I thought he was one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball before injury. I would 100% like to take a peek at him. As I'm trying to go down, Andrew Haney is a guy who's been pretty successful throughout his career. Wasn't a great year last year. He's going to turn 34, but if you can get him on a camp invite, at least he's been a pretty rubber arm type of guy. John Means, it almost feels, I was thinking about Scott Kazmir with him, who had all those years of layoffs and then came back to pitch well. I believe Means is supposed to come back this year. I could be wrong, that he is supposed to be a player who could eventually show up and help with the team. And if you're a pitcher, Cleveland's a good place to rehab and get back. And that's why, Shane wanted to stay here, why he took less money. It's a pretty solid environment. I've mentioned Sixto Sanchez a bunch of times. I know, again, long layoff, but if you're going to invite a guy to camp, I like the mix of someone, like a Haney who could just be a solid, back-endy type. He was not great a year ago, but good enough. Mixed with some of the more high ceiling guys like a Means, like a Sanchez. Invite a few guys to camp. Don't be afraid of health and injuries. And then one more guy, I don't think it's a camp invite gets him. I'm kind of intrigued by Yohan Moncada, just because I always like to bet on guys who came from bad situations. And it's hard to find a worse situation than Chicago. And there was a point in time where he looked like he was going to be a solid everyday player. And, is it injuries? Is it other things? Or is it playing for the White Sox? Like, what really derailed him? I don't know. I like to gamble on those type of guys. If you can get him on camp invites, give him that opportunity to come in. You always need a lot of players in camp. See what some of them can do. I'm going to just right now do the full apology for, my extra ADD-ness with this one. Having the trade break in the middle of it is, really interesting. It's my luck. But, I think that led to me being a little more distracted. So I want to apologize for that. But I hope you still enjoyed this show. Had some fun. With the whole idea of the scout thing it's interesting news, but it's not, I'm sure Justin will talk about it as well. And we'll probably have very different takes, and that's fine. Again, I just want to talk about media literacy because I went off social media for 2 weeks during the break, and the first few posts I saw when I came back, not great. So there's that. And then people always like to talk free agents. So let's talk about some free agents that are out there and interesting. Let's be honest, it's not going to be the qualifying offer guys. It's not the top of the market. It was never going to be the top of the market. But I think I gave you some players and some reasons why they could consider them. That could be upgrades. I know people ask about Polanco. Give you another switch hitter on the infield. But I just look at this, and to me, Solano and Kim are the two guys that really, because there's a consistency of performance. Just give me consistent. I don't want to buy low, pay someone and buy low. Find me consistency of performance, because that's what this team needs. They need more consistency of performance. Jimenez was an 81 WRC plus a year ago. Solano being a 118 last year, looking at a 36-point improvement. That's 36% increase in offense. That would balance out the defense. It makes almost a 1-for-1 in that situation. So you got to find, now the speed would give Jimenez the advantage. He's an excellent base runner and everything. But that's my point. You can find ways to still improve in spite of where the market is. Thank you for joining me, rating and reviewing, downloading. It helps. Tell me what you'd like me to do in some of these solo shows in the future. I used to do an MLB draft review when I was doing this show by myself. Do people want that? Is that something I should go back and do? Give me a year and I talk about Cleveland's draft, the best players, the worst players. I dig deep on it, talk about who they could have gotten, some of the big names to know. That was one of my most popular ones. I can also start going and doing some more draft stuff. So please let me know what you want in the Jeff episodes. Let me know what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you would like in the Jeff episodes. I'm just curious because I would like to make episodes for the sake of the listeners. I appreciate all of you out there listening. Thank you all again for joining me, and go Guardians, go.